In the vast chronicles of Middle-earth's history, few figures loom as ominously as Morgoth, the first Dark Lord and relentless tyrant.
His tale is as intricate as it is extensive, spanning centuries of strife and upheaval. While a comprehensive account of Morgoth's life would be too long for one video, this will be a brief video on the life of the first Dark Lord of Middle-earth, Morgoth.
In the beginning, Eru Ilúvatar, the supreme deity of Tolkien's universe, created the Ainur, divine beings of great power. The Ainur were divided into two groups: the Valar, who were the mightiest of the Ainur and hold positions of great authority, and the Maiar, who served the Valar. The most powerful of the Valar was a being called Melkor, who would one day become Morgoth. Melkor became rebellious because of his lust for power. He wanted the imperishable flame, which was used by Eru Ilúvatar to create life. However, Melkor's quest was in vain, as the flame imperishable represented Eru's essence rather than a tangible object. During the music of Ainur, a divine symphony that preceded the creation of the world, Melkor introduced discord into the harmony by weaving his own themes of discord and domination. Some Ainur were seduced by Morgoth's disharmonious music and joined him in rebellion against Eru's original theme. Eru Ilúvatar responded by introducing two new themes. The third one ultimately overcame Melkor's discord. Eru then halted the music with a single note, revealing that even Melkor's rebellion was within his ultimate plan, as he knew what Melkor was going to do before he even did it. This demonstrated Eru's omnipotence and showed that Melkor's actions were ultimately futile against the will of the supreme deity. When the Valar and the Maiar first entered Arda, which was the physical world created by Eru Ilúvatar, Melkor began corrupting it. This began the first great war between Melkor and the rest of the Valar. This war went on for some time before the last of the Valar arrived in Arda. One of the Valar that arrived was Tolkas. His physical strength was so immense that it chased Melkor away and into the darkness. While Melkor was in hiding, the other Valar began establishing the world of Arda. They created a home for themselves, called Almorand. On this land, the Valar created two great lands, called Iluin and Ormal. When they had finished, the Valar then celebrated and had a great feast. Tolkas married Nessa, and during the feast he became so intoxicated that he fell into a deep sleep. During this time, Melkor returned and created his fortress of Utumno. After Melkor's fortress was complete, corruption began spreading all across the land once more. Melkor then led a surprise attack against the Valar, destroying the two lands and throwing the world into unbalance. The Valar then fled to the land of Aman, where they created a new home for themselves, called Valinor. In their new home, they created two great trees, Talperion and Laurelin. One was gold and one was silver. Since the Valar created a new home for themselves, Melkor needed to attack once more, but he needed time to regain his power after his first attack. The Maiar that sided with Melkor were corrupted and turned into the first Balrogs. Melkor then built his new fortress of Angband, where he left his most loyal servant in charge of it, a powerful Maiar called Sauron. During this time, the elves awake. Melkor comes across them and corrupts many of them, turning them into the first orcs. He forces the orcs to breed to create a massive army. The Valar, worried that Melkor would corrupt all the elves, they led a great attack against the Dark Lord. This battle was known as the War of the Gods. Melkor would be defeated by the Valar and their forces. He would then be chained in the walls of Mandor for an indefinite amount of time. While Melkor was imprisoned,
The rest of his forces would go into hiding as they waited for their lord to return. After thousands upon thousands of years, Melkor would beg his brother Manwë to free him. Melkor was granted his freedom, though many of the Valar, including Tolkas, didn't agree with Manwë's decision to pardon the Dark Lord. Melkor, finally free, would then approach the Noldor elves. There he would meet an elf called Fëanor. Fëanor was creating the Silmarils, and Melkor wanted nothing more than to have these gems in his possession. Melkor tried to trick Fëanor with his lies in order to bring the elf to his side, though eventually Fëanor would see the Dark Lord for who he truly was and reject Melkor. This news of Melkor's treachery would be heard by the Valar Tolkas. Tolkas would immediately try and capture Melkor once more, but Melkor saw Tolkas' attack from a mile away, and the Dark Lord fled south before Tolkas could confront him. While in the southeast of Valinor, Melkor would find a dark spirit called Ungoliant. This spider-like spirit would join Melkor in return for riches. Ungoliant weaves a cloak of shadow which allows her and Melkor to be cloaked from the Valar's sight. They reach the two trees and Ungoliant drinks the sap from the trees, draining the trees completely dry. This act leaves the world in utter darkness. They then travel to Formenos, where they steal the jewels that are kept there, including the Silmarils. He also manages to kill Fëanor's father, Finwë. After this horrendous act, Fëanor gives Melkor the new name of Morgoth, as Fëanor believed that Melkor no longer deserved his Valar name. Morgoth and Ungoliant then go to Morgoth's fortress of Angband. Ungoliant demands that Morgoth give her the jewels they stole for her to consume. Morgoth gives her all the jewels she desires, except for the Silmarils, as he refuses to give them up. Morgoth at this point was so weak from all the evil acts that he had committed, and Ungoliant was at his strongest after consuming the sap from the two trees. Morgoth stood no chance. Ungoliant imprisoned Morgoth in her webs and began torturing him. Morgoth, close to death, let out a loud scream that awoke his servants, the Balrogs, that slept beneath Angband. The Balrogs managed to chase Ungoliant away and save Morgoth. Morgoth would make a crown for himself. He would keep the Silmarils. The elves had now spread all across Beleriand, while Morgoth was still in chains. Morgoth was angered by this, as he didn't like the fact that the elves were free. This starts the War of Beleriand. Now, since this is a brief history of Morgoth, I won't go into too much detail about the war, and there were many battles in the war. But in the beginning of the war, Morgoth was mostly losing, as his forces were destroyed by elves and dwarves. But one thing that did at least make the Dark Lord happy was that his Balrogs had managed to kill Fëanor. The elves, confident that they can defeat Morgoth, head to his Angband fortress to confront the Dark Lord. This was called the Siege of Angband. Luckily for the Dark Lord, his forces were strong enough to hold the elves back for some time. While Morgoth was stuck in his fortress, he was regaining his strength and expanding his underground realm. When he had regained his strength, he released his dragons in the fourth battle of this war, called the Battle of Sudden Flame. This attack force led by dragons and Balrogs was too much for the elves to handle, and the siege of Angband ended. But the elves were not done yet, as the king of the Noldor, Fingolfin, rode to Angband and challenged the Dark Lord to a one-on-one battle. The fight lasted longer than Morgoth expected, and Fingolfin did manage to wound the Dark Lord. But Morgoth, once the mightiest of the Valar, was too powerful for the Noldor king. Fingolfin was defeated by Morgoth. As he lay before Morgoth, waiting for death, he swung his sword one last time, stabbing the Dark Lord in his foot. Before Morgoth can snap his neck, Manwë's greatest eagle, Thorondor, strikes the Dark Lord in the face and carries Fingolfin's lifeless body away. Even though Fingolfin died, when he stabbed Morgoth for the last time, it would leave the Dark Lord with a limp for the rest of his life. Over a decade would pass by before the fifth battle of the war would commence. But during this time, the two elves, Beren and Luthien,
would sneak into Morgoth's Angband fortress to steal the Silmarils. They wear disguises to get them into Angband, and even though Morgoth can see that they were wearing disguises, he still lets them approach him to see what their plan is. Luthien begins dancing for the Dark Lord. While she begins dancing, the Dark Lord thinks about what he should do to his new guests. However, Luthien's dancing makes Morgoth fall asleep. While Morgoth is sleeping, Beren manages to steal one of the Silmarils before Morgoth awakes. This leaves the Dark Lord with only 2 Silmarils left. Some time passes before the 5th battle of this war begins. This battle was called the Battle of Unnumbered Tears. In this battle, men join the elves to try and defeat the Dark Lord. However, Morgoth also recruits men into his own army. These men were called Easterlings. Morgoth's now massive army manages to defeat the elves and men of Beleriand, as Morgoth wins the Battle of Unnumbered Tears. Even though Morgoth was victorious, he lost one of his most powerful lieutenants, the Lord of the Balrogs, Gothmog. Nevertheless, Morgoth now controlled all of Beleriand. Some time would pass before the half-elf Eärendil would set sail to the land of Aman. When he got there, he would beg the Valar for their help, and would tell the Valar that without their help, Morgoth would conquer all of Arda. The Valar send the host of Valinor to help in their fight against Morgoth. These include the Vanyar and Noldor elves, some Maiar, and even Valar. This final battle would be called the War of Wrath, and the war would last for 42 years. Near the end of the war, Morgoth is on the precipice of defeat. As a last attempt to win the war, he sends his dragons to join the war effort. This force of dragons is led by the mightiest of all dragons, Calagon the Black. When all seems lost, Eärendil arrives on a flying boat accompanied by eagles to aid in the war effort, manage to turn the tide of the war once more as Eärendil kills Calagon the Black. Morgoth knew that he had been defeated. In one last attempt to ensure that he is not captured, he pleads with his enemies that he be pardoned. The host of Valinor do not even listen to him. He is put in chains and thrown into the void, unable to reach the physical world. And so we reach the end of Morgoth's story. Though it is believed that Morgoth will rise again in one final battle, called the Battle of All Battles, it is prophesied that when Morgoth is finally defeated, that the second song of the Ainur will take place, and that the world will be rebuilt.